Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. And today we're going to do a soft spoken whisper of a short story from a book called The Haunting Story of Ghosts and Ghouls, written by Geoffrey Palmer and Noel Lloyd. The name of the story is Black Ribbon. In 1665, a son was born to Lord Tyrone, a wealthy, rich Irish landowner. The child's title was Lord Decies. A year later, a girl called Nicola Sophie Hamilton was born, also of rich parents. The two children had the same tutor and grew up to be close friends. When the time came for their ways to part, they were broken-hearted, and thinking that they might never see each other again, they made a vow. The first to die would return to the other. As it happened, they were able to see each other fairly frequently during the years that followed, and though the promise was never forgotten, neither of them mentioned it nor thought much about it. Nicola Hamilton married Sir Tristram Beresford in 1687. Lord Decies' father died in 1690, and he became Lord Tyrone. 3 years later, in the October, Sir Tristram and his wife went on to visit Nicola's sister, Lady McGill, at Gill Hall in County Down. One morning, Lady Beresford came down to breakfast looking very pale and drawn. She seemed to have something on her mind, something that had frightened and confused her. "Are you well?" her husband asked her. "You look as though you slept badly." Lady Beresford brushed aside his question. "I am all right," she said indifferently. Then her husband noticed that she had taken a white black ribbon around her wrist. "What is the matter with your wrist? Have you sprained it, my dear?" Lady Beresford moved her hand so that the ribbon could not be seen, remarking, "My wrist is not sprained. You are mistaken. There is nothing the matter with it." "Then why—" her husband began, but she interrupted him. "Tristram, I want you to promise me that you will never ask me about this black ribbon. I shall wear it all the time, and you will never see me without it. But, please, never ask me why I am wearing it." Her husband was a good-natured man. He shrugged his shoulder and smiled tolerantly. "Very well, my dear. You shall have your wish. Now we will change the subject." Breakfast continued, but Lady Beresford still showed signs of agitation, glancing repeatedly at the window and at the door. Finally, her husband put down his cup. "My dear, there is something the matter," he said. "I have never seen you behaving like this before. I am expecting a letter to tell me that my old friend Lord Tyrone is dead, that he died last Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Sir Tristram stared at her. "You must have had a bad dream," he declared. "I beg you to forget all this nonsense. Come now, be your usual cheerful self." Lady Beresford smiled sadly. "I wish I could be," she murmured, staring out of the window at the lawns and flower beds which surrounded the lovely old country house. "I shall be able to tell you something else soon, something that will please you very much." At that moment the butler entered, carrying a tray on which were some letters. Sir Tristram picked them up and turned them over. One letter was sealed with black wax. "He is dead!" Lady Beresford exclaimed. "I told you, Lord Tyrone is dead." She seems to be scarcely listening as her husband read the letter. It was from Lord Tyrone's steward. One letter was sealed with black wax. This was the letter. "He died the previous Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Sir Tristram put the letter on one side as his wife stood up. "I will go to my room," she said, "but I will give you my other news first, and this will make you happy. I am going to have a child, and that child is going to be son." "How do you know?" Sir Tristram asked, but there was only the gentle closing of the door for answer. He looked down at the letter again, shook his head in a puzzled way, and muttered, Lord Tyrone's death has something to do with the news of the child. But what? And how did she know that her old friend was dead? Why is she wearing a black ribbon? Sir Tristram never found the answer to his questions. His son was born some months afterwards, and when the boy was 6 years old, Sir Tristram died. For the next few years, Lady Beresford lived the life of a recluse. She avoided all her former friends, kept to her house in the country of Derry, and seemed to prefer solitude to all human contact. The only family she would visit occasionally was that of Mr. and Mrs. Jackson of Coleraine. Mr. Jackson had a brother-in-law named Colonel Georges. He was much younger than Lady Beresford, and everybody was surprised when, in 1704, after having been a widow for some years, she married this young soldier. Her friends and neighbors prophesied an unhappy marriage, and they were right. Colonel Georges turned out to be a selfish, cruel, and a spendthrift. The former Lady Beresford had a son, 2 daughters, and later a second son. The day after the birth of the second son was Nicholas' 47th birthday. She asked her eldest son, Sir Marcus Beresford, 20 years old, her married daughter, Lady Riverston, the Archbishop of Dublin, and an old clergyman friend who had christened her, to make up a small party to celebrate. She greeted her family and friends with pleasure. And they sat in the bedroom chatting and admiring the new baby. You look very young for 47, said the old clergyman, looking fondly at his hostess. Nay, but I am 48 today, protested Lady Beresford, and I feel very well and happy. She added with much gaiety in her voice that the others looked at her in surprise. It was many years since she had been so cheerful. You are mistaken, said the clergyman. You are 47. I looked up the date of your baptism just before I came here, as I was not sure of your age. You should be glad, dear lady, that you are a year younger than you thought you were. Most women would rejoice at such a discovery. But Lady Beresford had turned white and was trembling. Surely not, she protested. Am I really only 47? There is no doubt about it, the clergyman assured her. Then you have signed my death warrant, she told him. I know now that I shall die very soon. I thought the danger point had been passed, but I was wrong. I must make all the necessary preparations. Please leave me, all of you, except my son and daughter. When they were alone, her children plied her with questions. What did she mean? Why was she going to die? Why did she want to be 48 rather than 47? Lady Beresford silenced them with her raised hand, lying in the large four-poster bed from which the thick curtains of crimson velvet hung. She looked very small and lost in the expansive white sheets and huge pillows. The new baby slept peacefully in a cot near the bed. I have told you that soon I shall die, she began. And now I will tell you why. You know that Lord Tyrone and I were very close friends, and we were separated at an early age. We made a solemn promise that whichever of us died first would appear to the other. One night, just over 20 years ago, when your father and I were still staying at the Guildhall, I awoke to find Lord Tyrone sitting at the edge of my bed. I screamed and shook your father, but could not wake him. I asked Lord Tyrone why he had come in the middle of the night without warning. He asked me if I had forgotten our vow. I died last Tuesday, he said, at 4 o'clock, and I have come to tell you things you ought to know. I struggled up and pulled a cloak around my shoulder. What things? I asked. Although he was so near to me, I felt as though there was a great distance between us. He gazed at me solemnly. You are going to have a son, he said, and in the fullness of time that son will marry my daughter. In a few years your husband will die. You will grieve for a long time, but you will marry again, and your second husband will ill-treat you and make you unhappy. You will have more children, and you will die in your 48th year. I could hardly take in what he was saying. His mournful tones and dark eyes seemed to cast a spell on me. "Give me a sign," I cried, "a proof that your appearance is real, so that when morning comes I shall know this was not a dream." "What can I do?" he asked. "I cannot touch you, for that would injure you." "I don't mind a small blemish. You are a brave woman," he said, and laid his marble cold hand on my wrist. As he touched me, the sinews shrank up and the nerves withered. "Now," he went on, "while you live, let no mortal eye ever see your wrist." I looked down at my head, and when I looked up again, he had vanished. I felt chill with horror, and a cold sweat came over me. I fell asleep in a flood of tears. The next morning I bound up my wrist with a black ribbon before going downstairs, and I have never taken it off. After his first inquiry, your father did not mention it again. You, my son, were born the following July, and your father died 6 years later. I then made up my mind that I would give up the pleasures of society so that I would not meet anyone who might persuade me to make a second marriage. But, alas, in the one family I remained friendly with, I met a man who was destined by fate to prove my undoing. Children were born to me, and all Lord Tyrone's prophecy had come true, with the exception of your marriage, Marcus, and the forecast of my death. Today, I thought, was my 40th birthday. I thought I had passed my 48th year, and that the worst would not now happen. I was happy. I was going to live. Now I have been told by the men who christened me that I was mistaken about my age, and that the dreaded time has not passed. The prophecy can still come true, and will. When I am gone, I want you to take the black ribbon from my wrist, and before I am buried, you alone will see what Lord Tyrone touched me. Now please leave me." Sir Marcus Beresford and his sister left the bedroom, their hearts heavy with sorrow, their minds buzzing with the questions they had been unable to ask. For an hour all was quiet. Then a bell in the bedroom rang violently. They hurried back, but before they could reach the bedroom door, they heard a servant call out, "She is dead! My mistress is dead!" Sir Marcus told the servant to leave the room. He and his sister knelt by the side of the bed, unbound the black ribbon, and found their mother's wrist just as she had described it, with every sinew shrunk and nerve withered. Lady Beresford was buried in the Cathedral of St. Patrick in Dublin. Later Sir Marcus Beresford married the daughter of Lord Tyrone. The black ribbon was kept among the family possessions and handed out from father to son, a constant reminder of the ghost whose prophecies came true. Well then, I hope you enjoyed this little story. I decided to record this particular one to show you what I'm reading. I do not know if that was necessary or not, but you can tell me whether you like it or not. So, hope you're relaxed. Goodbye.